Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, and as we did last year, as we're going to do this year, it's time for the mid-season review. We're 8 rounds done, 9 rounds to go, or 9 races to go I should say, 7 rounds to go, so we have 2 double headers coming up. But it's at the midpoint in the season when we've got a little bit of a week's break between the DNSA and Mid-Ohio, so we're just going to review the first half of the season, preview the second half a little bit of the season, particularly with the hybrid engine coming in from next week, and we'll give you sort of a 5-10 minute segment about all you need to know about the hybrid at the end, as well as a few little bits of news from the week. But as we did last year, we've got a few different topics we're going to discuss. It's pretty much the same ones as last year. A few different topics to go over. We sort of see where we think of well, our opinions on certain driver seasons, little debate points between ourselves on various topics throughout the season. So let's begin with the driver of the season so far. I mean, it's not as clear cut as it was last year. I think that's one positive. I presume you may both gone for Palou, or?
No, I actually wanted to go away from the championship leader. Do you want me to start off and kick us off with it?
Well, I didn't go for Palou either, so.
Okay, so I went for Will Power. I just think it's been quite an incredible bounce back, to be honest, from such a rocky 2023. There are obviously so many off-track distractions, as we spoke about, with his wife Liz and her life-threatening illness, and essentially from the brink of almost retiring last year, that being a big consideration. Here in 2024, he's now right back in the title fight, heading into this second part of the season, which I must say is very excitingly poised, with I think the top 3 are split by 32 points or something similar. I just feel he's kind of restored that sort of level-headedness, re-established the sort of consistency he showed in 22, and I think that's kind of partly owing to a step up from Penske. You know, they've refound the qualifying form. That's been a massive thing. I mean, yes, Power, I think he took double Iowa pole, where he's a bit of a master in qualifying last year, but he only made the Fast 6 once on road or street courses. 7 attempts so far this year, made it 4 times. He started inside the top 3 in half of the races. He's finished on the podium half of the races. 3 of them were second places, and then obviously he won in Road America. His best worst finish is 7th, apart from the crash in the Indy 500. That's really the only real mishap we've seen from Power this year. He's been inside, the top 7 in all road and street course races, no matter whether he's been pegged back. Like we saw at Detroit, where he had about 1 million penalties, and Laguna Seca last time out. But I think it became a bit of a joke at some points where he was so often qualifying second, finishing second. It was so good to see him finally get that win.
I've also gone for Power. I thought you'd both go for Palou, so I thought I'd go different. But I also went for Power, and sort of I feel like Power's been a bit more consistent. I think obviously him and Palou both had one. What was that? Palou's been consistent. They sort of had both had one off race. I think the argument you could have is Palou's off race wasn't really his fault, whilst Power's was all his own doing in some ways. But I feel it's hard to say, because Palou has been consistently at the front, but it feels like Power's been at the front more, almost. I think at the start of the season, he was pretty much coming second every single week. So, it's tight. As I said, it's not as clear-cut as it was last year. But, I feel Power's sort of got that Palou ability this year, as you sort of mentioned, to somehow teleport to the front without really doing anything. He's just like Laguna Seca, for example. I feel like every time we saw him, he was off the track and still ended up finishing 7th. He got almost half spun by his teammate and he still finished 7th. So, I mean, look, these are the results longer term, which win you championships. And I feel like after a disappointing year, obviously there's all the off-track issues, but after such a disappointing year, it'd be quite easy just naturally for his confidence to drop off after, having a win this year and not having all these poles and podiums. And he's bounced back pretty well. And he sort of came out of the blocks a bit more flying than Palou, I felt like. So he's left a good impression. It's hard to sort of say Palou's not been as good, but when you compare it to last year, where he was on that run of like 4 wins in 5 races, it's almost like hard to he can't compare himself to that. So
this is really true. I must say, like, I think the big part of me choosing Power for this is the comparison to last year, which I guess is a bit harsh on Palou, because, as you say, it couldn't really get much better.
But let's say Palou, his 2022 was pretty average. If it was if he didn't have if last season didn't exist, I feel like I'd put below for this. But it's all about expectation, really, isn't it? So,
and realistically, there's so little to split the pair.
Yeah, I kind of went with different because there was so many choices that I just didn't know who to pick. And I kind of didn't want to try and go with Palou, so I went with Kirkwood just for the fact of he bet his own kind of, not his own record, but he kind of bet they're finishing in top 5 kind of without a win. And I think it just comes back to kind of consistency, and if you can continue doing that, obviously a win would be good, but if he's consistently kind of getting in the top 5s, I think he could be in with a chance of maybe being in the fight for in the championship.
I think it's quite good that none of us picked Palou, actually, because it is a bit boring just going for the championship leader. I think a theme throughout this, I've got quite a few honourable mentions kind of written down in my notes, and Kirkwood was my honourable mention for driver of the season. I think if we were to do a most improved driver of the season, he would possibly be there. I think, we had really high peaks last year, but there were also quite a few troughs, and it was very up and down. It was quite streaky in some ways. Obviously we made such a big thing of, he's only 2 top 5s were victories, and now
you started it when speaking to him.
Yeah, I know, and he kind of made him aware of it. I don't know if he was before, but no, I think he's kind of, as we speak here, he's off the back of 3 successive top 5s. Yes, he's not kind of had that peak performance, or at least peak performance comparative to the rest of the field this year. He's not got that podium or that win yet, but I think I would argue that what we're seeing from him this year in terms of the consistency, the best worst finish in the field, I think still being 11th, he's been in the top 10 every race bar one. That's almost even more impressive, and he's really turning into that sort of complete package.
But I said this last week, he's going to hit those highs again. For him, it's about developing this consistency, which Andretti have lacked in recent years, and that's the most important thing, because you're always going to have those peaks again. You don't really lose the peaks longer term, but you need to gain that flat line consistency, because you won't win a championship with having 5 peaks a year, but you will win a championship by having top 10s every race in a year. So that's the important thing for Kirkwood. Look, Andretti aren't in a position to contend for championships realistically. Next year might be a different story, but he's certainly been a worthy contender this year, and sort of similar to that. We'll get to our next point, the surprise of the year. Who's nicely nicely surprised us. I was trying to come out with a different word there. I'll go first for this one. I think there's a few. I've got an honourable mention as well, but I think I'm going to go for Santino Ferrucci for this one. Bit left field, but I feel Santino Ferrucci isn't usually quiet. Let's put it that way. But on track, I feel like he's quietly gone around his business quite well this year. We're 8 races in, and he's got 5 top 10s. That's really impressive for a Foyt team who, outside of the Indy 500, didn't have a single top 10 all of last year. So, firstly, that Penske alliance is working absolutely fantastically, at least on Ferrucci's side of the garage. He led laps at Barber. Again, he was strong at Indy. And he lies 12th from the standings, 2 points off Christian Lundgaard, who looked like he was going to have yet another breakout year. And it's a real step up in performance by Foyt and by Ferrucci. And I know we've had incidents this year, but he's becoming a bit less regular to that at times. I know we've got the whole Grosjean beef, whatever, and the whole Detroit incident. But when he's not dealing with all that on track, I feel like he's made a big step up this year. So I think it's been a positive surprise on track.
Yeah, outside of the 500, it has essentially been a clean slate for Foyt. And Ferrucci didn't actually have the same heights that he had at the 500 last year, albeit still made the Fast 6, if my memory serves me correct, from only a month ago. So, it's kind of been a clean slate on road or street courses. And we have seen a real upturn. But I'm glad you went for that, because I've gone for probably the more obvious one, being Felix Rosenqvist. I don't think anyone quite expected to see what we've seen from him in Meyer-Shank Racing. I think if we were to pick a most impressive team so far, it's probably been them, at least on the side of the 60 car. Obviously, we had the whole Tom Blomqvist debacle on the other side. But I think from the outset, it was just a massive statement from St. Pete onwards from Rosenqvist. He qualified second there, took pole in his group at Thermal, backed that up with a podium in the All-Star race at Thermal, got the team's first ever championship race pole at Long Beach then the following race. I think he's just kind of continued to solidify that the way he started the season was no fluke. I think, it's just worth putting into context as well, just how impressive this is, given how much Majashak struggled in the last year or two. They got one podium in 22, I believe, earlier in the year, and then kind of from there just spiraled downwards. And last year they only got one top 10 finish as a team, and that was at Texas on the Oval. And their best road in street course qualifying was 8th on one occasion last year, Pagano in Detroit. Then no other top 10 qualifying performance apart from Iowa. And this year, Rosenqvist has pretty much been a frequenter in the top 10 every single race. And okay, the Andretti Alliance might be a factor, but I genuinely believe that Rosenqvist is the biggest factor here in this leadership role that he seems to be thriving in, that he didn't have at McLaren, he didn't have at Ganassi. He's collaborating well with the team. The car seems to fit him really well. And I think the environment just seems to fit him really well. And he's kind of taken to it like a duck to water and just immediately was up to speed, really. And he's kind of now achieved consistency we've never seen throughout his career. So, I just didn't think anyone saw quite this level coming.
Rosenqvist was actually my backup for this one. But you mentioned the last few races. He's finished 14th and 11th. But if I was asked where Rosenqvist would finish on a weekly basis pre-season, I probably would have said, the 11th to 14th mark, which sort of is testament to how well he is performing, where the expectation is now raised because of how, the first half of the season's gone.
I don't really know if mine technically is a surprise, but I think just in terms of kind of one result I put Linus Lundqvist. I don't know why I nearly said that wrong. I think just for the weekend in Alabama, he got the pole and then he kind of went on to get the podium. I don't know why I nearly blanked that. I think kind of just in terms of he was a rookie and kind of went up and did that. I think it's a really good result, and if he can do that in the first year, then he can kind of continue to do it or kind of get them high results the rest of the season.
I was just going to say, I think Lundqvist this year, it's been a weird one because he set real heights.
Like Kirkwood, isn't it?
Mm.
In those 3 races with Maya Shank last year, he qualified, I think, 12th, 11th. I don't know which order exactly, but he's got the pole this year, and then I think his next best qualifying is like lower than 15th. So, and I think the pole, it showed his class in mixed conditions, obviously. Aside from that, I think he probably would have wanted more from this year, to be honest. I think the podium at Barber was kind of the execution of a strategy, but I mean, he showed pace, but even kind of he said that it was largely a strategy thing as well. I'm really keen to see more from him because he's shown obviously those flashes with that podium and then the recent pole as well.
Sort of on the lines you were touching on, disappointment of the season so far. Tristan Vautier, anyone? Colin Brown? Luca Giotto? No. Marco Andretti? No. I hate to say it, but I feel like there's a lot of people for this one. I've gone for Graham Rahal, which, I mean, the thing is, end of last season, there was that whole little upturn in form. You had the pole in Portland, you had the podium in IMS after the pole, and things were looking a bit more rosier for him and Rahal Letman Lanigan Racing. But we're now halfway through the season, and he's got 2 top 10s so far. I mean, he hasn't had that low amount of top 10s, I think, I looked since some ridiculous year. Like, it's a bit disappointing, really, from Rahal. It's just, I think as a whole, it's not a personal issue. I feel like it's a bit of a team issue, to be completely honest. I think Lundgaard's one who's been slightly disappointing too. But, the Indy 500 issue wasn't fixed. He really only avoided being bumped because someone else crashed their main chassis. And then, 2 top 10s, it hasn't looked on the pace really anywhere. IMS looked like a place they could be quick out on the road course. They weren't that quick. I mean, it's just been disappointing. The misery just continues, and every week it seems like something goes wrong for him. So,
I was just gonna chime in there and say, it feels like every week we get something on the radio from Rahal complaining about, I don't know, gears, or he's not getting any grip, or he's just destroying the tires or something along those lines. And I think I do kind of agree. I would extend that to kind of being a team thing, really. Let me do the quick maths. He is 29 points behind Lundgaard,
which isn't too
that
bad,
long.
but I think it's hard to put Lundgaard when he got the podium. Lundgaard has been disappointing, in my opinion. But I feel Rahal, as sort of the team leader, has been a bit more.
Yeah, I just generally think as a team they've just not reached the heights as maybe others. I think Penske being the most notable on road and street courses almost this year have made that leap forward. They've either stood still or almost made a slight step back. I think obviously they improved a little bit in the 500, to be fair to them. I think they promised a lot more. They promised a lot more on road and street courses. I mean, people were saying that if they can fix their oval form, they could be championship contenders, and we've not seen anything to suggest that this year.
Yeah, I mean, the next few, because we haven't got an indication of ovals, really. The Indy 500 isn't really a representative one, so that's a big one.
It was short ovals as well, where Rahal said the car was possibly even worse last year. So
we got, 5 of them coming up. So.
Yeah. Do you want me to go with mine?
Yeah, go on.
So it probably, again, would come as a massive surprise. And I do feel like it's a tad harsh because it could have been so different. But it's Joseph Newgarden. He is 9th in the championship, 104 points back at the midpoint. That is a massive, massive amount for a driver that has 2 championships to his name, had that massive streak of finishing second in the championship, just missing out. And then last year was a little bit more disappointing. I think, he was spectacular in the Indy 500 the whole month of May. Once again, that's not discrediting any of that, but I think just comparative to what could have been, it's just really, really disappointing, isn't it? He seems to have started off so well. He won St. Pete. He was possibly even on for winning Long Beach. And at that point, it looked like with 10 laps to go in Long Beach, he could be winning the first 2 races, both on street courses. And now all of a sudden, after having, after those closing laps in Long Beach, having obviously being hit from behind by Herta, dropping off the podium, then the day or so after finding out about the disqualification from St. Pete. And now all of a sudden the narrative is that he's only good on ovals and isn't any good on road and street courses, which isn't true, but obviously this set him back massively. And it's kind of been all or nothing in this kind of recovery mode since obviously falling off the podium Long Beach, majorly being the disqualification from St. Pete. And I guess, has he been trying too hard? Because there have been some very uncharacteristically kind of errant performances. He's kind of been a picture of inconsistency. And it could have been so easily so different. Like the raw pace has been there. I feel like disaster is a harsh word because he won the Indy 500. Road America was so good for him and Penske. He should have won the first 2 races, but kind of taking it as what it is without having that result at St. Pete. The execution's kind of just not been there since. And I think Laguna Seca kind of summed that up, didn't it? He was given that fortuitous opportunity with the way the caution fell and the pits were allowed to be kept open, but then he went off the track twice and finished 19th.
Yeah, I went with this. I went with the same. I kind of grouped in the whole situation that happened in Petersburg. Like you said, the expectation coming into the season was he was going to be higher, and he's not. And I think even after the result and what happened, I think personally I expected him to kind of climb back a bit and kind of get them results and be like, oh, well, this happened, but it doesn't matter because I'm still here and I'm still kind of fighting. And it seems very unlikely. We've discussed this before, but it seems unlikely that he's going to be able to be in the championship fight. And being that low down and that many points behind, he'd have to win so many races, and everyone else in front of him would have to do so much worse than what is needed. And I think it's very unlikely. And like I said, it's the expectation of it all coming in, and I just kind of wish that he'd come back and had a better result. And like I said, it's the consistency of it all. We can't just have really high highs and then really high lows. You need to kind of be in the middle, and you need to be kind of consistent, and you need to be at the top, and that's what's going to help you win championships. And having Indy 500, that was really good, but then having the results since and before that, it's just, you can't be up and down. You have to kind of be just consistent, like we've been saying.
Yeah, it kind of does pain me to put him as the disappointment just because of how high the highs have been. But I think just looking at where he is in the championship and focusing purely on championship, yeah, he might come away from this year feeling fulfilled, having won that back-to-back Indy 500, making history for the first time in 22 years. But I think just looking purely on the championship, it's been disappointing. And do we have any honourable mentions, by the way, for this?
It's bad for an honourable mention for someone not being good, really. But
Unhonourable? I don't know what
I think there's a few. Augustine Canapino, I think, has been a tad disappointing. I know the whole off-track saga, but when you look on track, I feel like it's been a bit messy at times. Stingray Rob, I think, is one you've sort of got to say hasn't really improved in the second year, particularly in a team where Santino Ferrucci's made a step up. There's a few like Marcus Ericsson you could put in there. Maybe you expect a bit more from Andretti. I feel Christian Rasmussen is on the bubble. He's had good races, but we all know like there's been times he's been perceived as quite aggressive at times and a bit over the mark. I wouldn't say he's been that disappointing just because he's a rookie, but I feel like he's not miles away from it. But yeah, there's a few.
Yeah, Marcus Ericsson's mine. He's, I think, 60 points adrift of his nearest teammate. We've not quite seen the same kind of consistency and rhythm that we've been used to from him. Obviously, the 500 was just a wretched month. I agree with Rob. I mean, he's just so far behind Ferrucci. You'd expect so much better. He said that he was going to avoid. He's good at avoiding the sophomore slump, but I think we're still yet to see proof that he can be a long term. I think Rasmussen to an extent. He's also kind of been struck with a bit of misfortune, a few too many rookie errors, and as we've said a few times, unfortunately, there's just not much more time for him to prove himself.
He's got what, 3 races left? Yeah.
3 races before Ed.
Tristan Vautier was disappointing.
He was having a great
He was quite good to try
to kind of sent it in on him, and then it just
you could argue he was the surprise of the season. 1, getting called up, and 2, actually like having half decent races. There was that period of like 20 laps to go. He was suddenly in 3rd. Like what was that all about? Good fight. I love that Coyne car. We've got Toby Sowery, which is news to the podcast actually. Toby Sowery's in the Dale Coyne car for next week.
Should we attack that now?
Yeah, let's attack it now. Whilst we're on the topic, I mean, probably not too much to say about him. Another Brit.
Yeah, that was my highlight. It's just good to see another Brit. I think, and it's just good to see kind of someone who was a promising talent on the ladder get a shot. I mean, he had that RLL test. I don't know whether the test was last year before, but it kind of felt like maybe he'd get the chance with them. That didn't happen in the end. They obviously gave Vips a few runouts and then Fittipaldi, but he showed last year he came back to Indy NXT for a few races and was immediately on the podium at Barber, which was impressive. His only full year though was 2019. Finished 3rd in the championship behind, I think Oliver Askew was the champion. Rinus VK was 2nd. He 1 win, but I think he finished in the top 5 12 times. I've got written down, so I hope that's right. Good to see him get a shot. He was in the Spa 24 hours this weekend. He's kind of made his home in sports cars, but actually it's worth a good time to plug. I've got a piece coming out on Monday on the kind of resurgence of the IndyCar ladder, because I mean there's some quite alarming stats in there about essentially how the grid has doubled in size in the last 5 years or so, and the overseas representation has boomed quite significantly. So yeah, go and check that out. There's some pretty nice nuggets in there.
Yeah, there's a really random rumour he'd race at RNL last year, but he's finally got his chance, so good on him. I mean, we don't really know too much about him, and there's not really much to say anything about any of the Coyne drivers, really, is there? But, at least they made their decision in good time this week. So we weren't waiting until Tuesday to find out or something. So fair play to you, Dale Coyne. So Toby Sowery is the latest Brit to join the IndyCar field. We're up to how many this year? We've had Legg, Harvey, Blomqvist, Eilert, and someone else. Sowery, there we are. That's 5. So quite the mix of Brits this year. And obviously, if you want to support the Brits, you can always head to the Formula Motorshop website to get your merch. I know he's not racing anymore, but Tom Blomqvist, the Formula Motorshop, is still sending his merchandise And we said this last week, but we have to remind you because it is just such a great deal. His driver helmet is available for just $39.99, which is a bit of a steal. These usually go for almost double the price. So if you're looking to get some Tom Blomqvist merch while it lasts, you probably never sell it again in 25 years. That'd be a collector's item. So don't tell us we didn't warn you. That's a banging deal on the Formula Model Shop website. So go and check it out because, as we know, it's the best place to get your merchandise in the UK and across the rest of Europe. It's not even $39.99. It's $34.99. Even better.
I must mention at this juncture as well, Meyershank Racing have been announced to be returning to IMSA next year. So that could be a landing spot for Blomqvist. Support him next year in the 24 Hours of Daytona and other IMSA events. Yeah, if you want to get the helmet, you can, or other products, you can use the discount code 5BOMB, all one word, FIVEBOMB, to gain 5% off products on the FMS site. Visit the Instagram highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram account for a link to an exclusive VIP section in the FMS store, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
And once you've finished reading all our fantastic articles on the website over the last few weeks, we make it nice and convenient by bringing over a nice pink banner on the homepage to hand you right over to the Formula Model Shop website.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content. And if you're enjoying this week's episode, please get in touch and let us know your answers to all of the categories that we have discussed today. And if you enjoyed the podcast as well, please give us a rating, a subscription on YouTube. It really helps us out.
Race of the year. I feel like it's got to be the Indy 500, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As much as it pains me to say it.
Yeah, it's kind of unanimous. Should we just pick out a couple that were good apart from the 500 before we dig into it? I think the other one that I noted was Scott Dixon's Long Beach fuel save performance was quite impressive.
Alabama was quite fun.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed, to be fair, I think it shows how good the races have been in general. I really enjoyed Laguna Seca last time out as well. I think Road America Power getting back into the victory circle.
It was a bit of a slow start to the year. St. Petersburg was a bit slow and thermal wasn't great, but it's got better.
But it's the Indy 500. That's really
ignoring all the stuff that I won't speak about, it pains me to say, but the sunset racing was cool. I think that when you watch the highlights, it's just so cool. Like the sun setting, darkness sort of coming over IMS is quite cool. Having the larger shadows, and obviously, the racing was good. It was we don't really see an Indy 500 where everyone's all in one queue. Everyone's sort of spread around the track. This year was kind of weird where everyone was sort of one traffic jam. We had a bit of everything. Bulb moves. We had a bit of chaos at the start. We had mega saves and it was a good race. I loved it. People were saying it's some of the best Indy 500s of all time, and the Indy 500 is pretty much guaranteed to be the best race every year. So
yeah, I mean it's not a foregone conclusion. Last year we were reveling in the glory of how good Texas was.
We'll never know.
Yeah,
how good Texas could have been.
But there can't possibly be another answer this year. Given, I mean, it's one of the best Indy 500s in history, one of the best runnings of the most historic race in the world. So yeah, there can't possibly be another answer. And I think after the rain delay, it just kind of had everything. It was frenetic. It was psycho, as Townsend Bell said, and the cooler track at the end, I think, only played into it that kind of sunset race, as you kind of said, Dan. It was, were we going to run on Sunday? Were we going to run on Monday? But
just added to it, just made it better.
When we finally got the race, I mean, it was crazy, wasn't it? I mean, I didn't get to bed until 6 a.m. after finishing writing up what Newgarden had to say, but it was very worthwhile. It was a bit disjointed to start with. We had kind of a lot more accidents than we had early on last year.
That made it fun almost.
Yeah, it did. And then kind of when we settled into that green flag period to end it, it led to kind of as authentic and vintage a fight to the flag as you can really get. And there were incidents that, as you said, played into it, kind of added to the strategy games we saw, just the kind of unparalleled, or at least recently, sort of levels of passing. I mean, it was the most overtakes since 2017. We had 49 lead changes, and that kind of went all the way to the climax and was capped off with possibly the greatest overtake of all time from Joseph Newgarden. It was essentially looking for all the world like he was going to end up in the wall, but flew around the outside of Pato Ward. Sorry, Dan. And charged to kind of take the win. And it was just, I mean, the history obviously to it, becoming first back-to-back winner in over 20 years. And the front row lockout for Penske, more history.
Carl Larson.
I mean, the stories all month. Yeah, Larson. I mentioned Rinus VK's qualifying from crashing to making it into the Fast 12 that's probably arguably my favourite moment of the month, actually. I thought that was just a spectacular moment, to be honest. Words just can't do kind of the spectacle justice, can they? I feel like we can't possibly kind of put it into words.
Stingray Rob at the front of Daly for that while, where we thought either Stingray Rob or Connor Daly would have won the Indy 500. What a crazy race. It's the good thing about it. Like, no other race you'll really genuinely believe that Stingray Rob or Connor Daly might put out a win here, but it's the Indy 500, isn't it?
Yeah. Ellie, I'm assuming you agree.
I went with the same.
Moment of the year. Sort of similar. I guess you could. Well, I guess really it should be New Garden versus Award, but I'm not going to say it for my own sanity.
Well, I would kind of like to kick this off because I've gone for not necessarily best moment of the year, but certainly biggest moment of the year. The Penske penalties, I think, are my moment of the year. To be honest, I think just for
I thought we were doing this a positive moment.
No, I've spun it differently, just because it's such a kind of big story. I mean, it's unprecedented. It was such a major shock when it happens. You know, obviously being 6 weeks after the event, we don't see wins overturned. We've essentially never seen that happen, let alone kind of a month and a half after the event. And I think looking a few months down the line, it has really altered the championship picture because, as I said in the New Garden segment, you know, he would have run that race regardless of the push to pass infractions. He took the pole, he commanded the race. And, you know, I'm not saying that him or McLaughlin, obviously also disqualified, would be in the championship lead, but I can't imagine that they haven't kind of had a bit of an altered approach that has kind of led to hints of inconsistency, most notably for New Garden kind of since then. You know, we've seen some desperate looking errors even from McLaughlin, looking Detroit, Laguna Seca. And it's just strange peaks and troughs from that pair, while Power has been kind of such a steady pair of hands at the front, having obviously not been penalised apart from the docking of 10 points, which ended up being 2 points by the time he was promoted up to second. Though. But I think this was just such a major story in kind of the IndyCar world and almost kind of extended beyond. You know, it was getting ESPN front pages, and you know, it obviously created this kind of friction in the paddock, a bit of discord. What is the truth? You know, we kind of don't think we'll ever know what the true truth is. Yeah, I think this is just the biggest story of the year, which is kind of why I've put it as my moment of the year. But if you want a good moment, then New Garden's pass on award.
I've got a few. I think Carl Larson qualifying for the Fast Six was quite an astonishing moment. I feel that was one which was quite good. Pato Award save at the Indy 500, I think, is pretty magical. You know, I think whoever it was, Townsend Bell said, you can get away with one, not two. I mean, that's something. I know his misfortune would be the highlight of that year's race. I feel like that was a moment which should be remembered for quite a long time. And the whole Georgina situation, I feel like it's got to be a moment. I mean, it was just so comical. Luca Giotto will be remembered for nothing in IndyCar apart from his massacre of a mannequin.
I almost forgot about that as well, so thank you for reminding me. I don't necessarily think it's the moment of the year, but I think it's like a interesting kind of bit. I kind of said the constant kind of battles between Ferrucci and Grosjean that kind of happens on the track. I think that's got to be mentioned somehow.
Yeah, that was in my honourable mentions. But Ferrucci aggro, Georgina was in my list, and also Will Power's win, which I obviously touched on earlier. But after kind of the toils of last year and the fact that Road America was one of the big scares in kind of Liz's health journey, to come back and then specifically the moment where he's celebrating in victory lane with Liz, with his son Bo, and there's kind of tears being shed. I just think that was quite a beautiful moment, to be honest. If we're going for a best moment, I think that actually trumps it for me over New Garden's pass, even if that was possibly the best overtake we've ever seen.
Right, let's look a bit forward to the rest of the year. One to watch. This is quite hard. I've gone for Alexander Rossi as my one to watch. He's historically pretty good at ovals. He's got a bit of experience. He's in a championship position, which is a bit more favourable. I'm not going to go out and say Rossi's going to win the championship, but I could see him maybe bagging a victory somewhere. I don't think he will, as we'll get onto later. But, you know, he could bag a victory somewhere. And he's had a pretty quiet but pretty good first half of the year. And I feel like he's gone under the radar a bit. And with all the ovals coming up, Rossi's pretty good at ovals. I feel one to watch.
Yeah, I went with him as well. I think he'll have kind of a surprising, not necessarily a surprising result, but I feel like something surprising will happen with him, which will bring out a good result. I don't know what, I don't know where. I'm not saying he's going to win either, but I'm just saying something's going to happen. And I think, yeah, if he continues getting top tens, like what I mentioned so many times before, consistency, he could be up there.
So when I say the name of mine, it might sound a bit odd, but I think it's very easily justified. And that is actually our current championship leader, Alex Palou, because, you know, a lot's been made of the fact that he has not yet won an oval race. He's not particularly spectacular on short ovals. I think his podium last year at Iowa was possibly the only top 5 he's ever actually managed on a short oval in his IndyCar career so far. We've seen, you know, a lot from him on super speedways. He's obviously shown, you know, he will be an Indy 500 race winner. He probably should be an Indy 500 winner. But I think in terms of short ovals, there's a lot to be proven. And, you know, last year he had the benefit of coming into the kind of latter part of the season where there were less ovals than there are this year, obviously having 6 more short ovals to go. There were only the 3 last year. But I think, you know, he only has a 23-point lead this year. Last year he led by, was it upwards of 100 points, at least in Newgarden, who was kind of categorized as the main threat. And I think if he can, you know, it will be crucial for his championship push with only 3 road and street course races left to get amongst the Penske cars, which we kind of expect to be the class of the field on these short ovals. You know, he has been a consistent top 10 finisher, but he's not really been a factor for victories on short ovals so far. And I just kind of feel he really needs to. I think last week I described it as he's almost been in damage limitation mode on short ovals. I don't know if that's totally fair, because at the end of the day, you know, you're not really limiting damage if you're still in the top 10 every week. That's every short oval race. That's strong. So yeah, I think having so many ovals with not the same buffer as last year, Palou's oval form could be decisive in deciding kind of the outcome of the championship, to be honest.
That leads us on nicely to our top 5 in the standings. Should we go? Let's go 5th to 1st, shall we? Just to leave anticipation. So I've gone for Scott Dixon in 5th. That's probably stupid. I've gone for Scott Dixon in 5th.
You probably kind of see my reaction there, but my eyes opened wide. I have gone for Joseph Newgarden because I believe, as we'll get onto, he will take at least 2 or 3 wins.
Mine's the same as it is now. I just went with Kirkwood. I feel like I don't really have anything to say. I just feel like he'll stay there.
Gone for Newgarden 4. He'll get wins. He'll probably speed Pyro again. But yeah, he's too far back to really make a substantial impact, I think.
I went for Pato O'Ward because I believe he is the best non-Penske driver on ovals and possibly even second to Newgarden at the moment. So I think he will make some gains. Not enough to be in the championship fight, I don't believe, but I think he'll make some gains at least. Yeah,
I also went with O'Ward.
I've gone from 3rd. I saw a stat the other day. He, in 21 career ovals, has finished in the top 5 16 times. That's absolutely nuts. And since 2021, he's had 2 races which were non-top 5s on ovals, which is absolutely insane. That is like unbelievable.
Yeah, and just compare that to what I kind of just said about Palou. Providing my stat is correctly, he's only had 1 top 5 on a short oval. That is a major contrast. I said Scott Dixon will be 3rd. I'll justify that when I kind of get to my next one. Yeah, I've gone for Dixon.
Oh, I went with Power.
Palou second.
Yeah, I also went for Alex Palou 2nd.
I went with Dixon 2nd. I don't know. I still believe in
And I guess this reveals our champions. Yeah, I went as you
I've
did.
changed
Dan,
my
with
mind.
willpower.
I've gone for VK. He's going to win every race.
Yeah, I went for willpower.
I went with Plo. I just didn't say that.
So yeah, I think just to kind of dwell on why Power going forward, I believe will be the champion is, he's 6 of his last 11 race wins have come on ovals. I think the belief is, I don't think the exact stats are there, but the belief is that he's done more hybrid testing than anyone. And, it's unclear how much of an advantage that could have, but it could, on especially the remaining road or street courses where that will be, I guess, a bit more of a factor. Penske have won, I think, the last 9 of the last 12 oval races, should be 10 of the last 12 with Iowa, the Iowa failure that Newgarden have. And they've won 11 of the last 13, 11 of the last 13 short oval races. And I think just given this overload of ovals to come, the fact that Power is only 23 points back, it just feels like he's in the driving seat for me. Penske have obviously been the class of the field on ovals, and I think over 6 races compared to only 3 road or street races, which Power still is capable of beating Palou and Dixon. I just feel like the gains will be probably too much. So I don't think I see Power losing as much ground, if any, in the 3 road and street races that I see Palou and maybe Dixon losing in the 6 short oval races. Power's already in the ballpark with better tracks to come. I think that says it all. Yeah, Ellie, why did you go for Palou?
I kind of just went off vibes, which was really bad. I didn't really have a solid kind of backup, but I think kind of last year he had that whole dominance that we said. Kind of went in. I can't remember how he performed this end of the year, but he said he was winning races in a row. And I think this year he came in. He's still at the top, so he's still dominating, but not as much as he did last year. But I still feel like that will come through somehow, and I don't know what it is. I feel like that will carry on because I feel like it can just disappear in a year, but I feel like it can't. That level that he had last year can't just disappear that quickly. It probably can, but facts.
Do we think the championship's decided in Nashville this year?
I think it probably will be. Yeah, I think just about. I think, having again those road. We speak about road and street races as if it's a foregone conclusion that Palou will beat Power. That's by no means the case, to be honest. I feel like it will, though. It's so close at the moment. I don't think we will see swings that large, because obviously you have the factors like your Newgardens, O'Wards, McLaughlins, who can easily take points off any of these guys that we are saying will be, say, top 2 in the championship.
Mid-Ohio is a very good track for Palou, as is Portland. So that's important to bear in mind. The 2 road courses we have left are probably the best 2 on the schedule.
I think Mid-Ohio is it's a crucial weekend for Palou, to be honest. I think any of these road and street races are crucial for him. And I think I've just gone him over Dixon for second because I just believe his peak performance is higher. I know we, time and time again, see Dixon make these kind of audacious, unexpected performances. He's more of a proven quantity on ovals, but I think Palou will be he's ever improving, as we saw at Iowa last year on these short ovals.
Do you think he'll get an oval win?
I don't think he will get an oval win, no, but I think he will be more in the ballpark. I think we'll see him on the podium once or twice, I reckon. But yeah, I mean, obviously Dixon kind of seems to peak late in seasons, and he started this one well. In addition to that, but I just think Palou is the faster driver at the moment, and it will probably take more circumstances for Dixon to beat him. But regardless, I expect it to be tight between the 2 of them, and to be honest, between the 3 of them as well. Hence why I think it will probably come down to Nashville.
Yeah, I keep saying this. I'm looking forward to Iowa because if we can get Newgarden, McLaughlin, O'Ward in the mix, we're in for a good championship. So I
was going to say that them races will change everything.
A lot hinges on Mid-Ohio though, because if Newgarden or O'Ward is an absolute stinker, it's very difficult from that point. So we're now on the case where it's a race by race basis for the championship. It's getting to the point where anyone below 5th has got a lot of work to do. Takes us on nicely to the remaining race winners like we did last year. I know we did this at the start of the season, but we'll just do it just for fun again. Newgarden, I presume you've all got locked in as one.
Yeah.
I think it's silly not to. Is he going to sweep Iowa this year? I think he'll win one. Two.
We'll get on to Iowa and the differences in a bit. But yeah, I think he will win at least one of them. I think he'll sweep it.
I think he'll sweep it again.
Yeah.
Hello's got to take one of the remaining roads straight, I think.
Although, yeah, agreed. What do you guys think about Pillow winning an oval?
No, I think I'll have a few close. I think it'll be better, but I don't think he'll. I think I'll probably get 2 podiums from the 6, maybe 3. I don't think he'll win one.
I don't think he'll win one. It would be nice for a prediction, but I don't think he will.
I didn't do it last year, so I won't make the mistake again. I'll go for Dixon.
No.
And I'm undecided where. I'm undecided whether he will win an oval.
I can see him winning a Nashville or something.
Yeah, I was gonna. Nashville was the one I was gonna put out there. Yeah, Nashville won the Milwaukee's.
I think Power will bag another one somewhere.
Yeah, I think Power will win at least one. I can see Power winning 2 more.
I can see Power on a Milwaukee or something.
Yeah.
Gone for. Okay, well, how many more of the rest of us got? I've got 3 more.
I've got 2 more.
3 more.
3 more, fine. Who's the mistake? I'm going to go for McLaughlin's going to get another one somewhere.
I've got him.
I can see a first oval win coming from McLaughlin.
McLaughlin's going to get his first oval win, and I could possibly see that coming at Gateway.
Oh, I was going to say Gateway. I need to work out what race I've got left in. You go for McLaughlin, Ellie?
Yeah, I've got him.
Fine. I feel it's a bit of a risk. I'm going to say Hurt is going to bag a Toronto.
Hurt is my final one, and then Toronto is what I had in mind. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see him steal one of the oval races, possibly even in Iowa if Newgarden doesn't sweep it.
I don't want to say risky winner, but I think the one a bit more out there is Kirkwood. Well, it's not out there, but I feel like I don't know where. I'm really hoping that it will do well for some reason this season.
And I've gone for O'Ward, obviously,
yeah,
because his overall record speaks for himself. I think I'm running out of ovals for him to win. I think he'll bag one of them somewhere. He'll bag an oval.
He was my toughest omission. I just think with 9 races to go, and my theory that Penske will have drivers winning multiple races, I just don't quite see it. I think he'll probably finish second at least once, maybe twice. But last season he was really strong on the ovals and still didn't get a win. So.
True. Well, to be fair, it was unfortunate because Gateway, it was only because Dixon was not cheating, but you know what I mean. And Iowa, his car didn't drive. I feel a bit bad for him because St. Petersburg is on record a win, but it doesn't feel like a win at all.
Yeah.
But I think from his standpoint, he doesn't consider that as a win. I think because, you spoke about the emotion of running out the car, hugging your team, feeling that raw emotion, and it doesn't feel like a win. And I feel like he needs to get one under his belt. I don't think he's losing confidence, but he needs to kickstart something again.
And I think with St. Pete as well, the fact that Newgarden probably would have won that race regardless is probably there as well. We don't know that, but I don't think Push the Pass gave him an advantage of whatever it was, 10, 15 seconds in the end. So, yeah. I mean, we're kind of banking on either him or Herter or Kirkwood to break the streak of Penske and Andretti. Penske and Ganassi winning every race on the track so far this year.
Yeah,
in alternating order.
Yeah, I said this on the chat the other day. The on-track winners have been Penske, Ganassi, Penske, Ganassi, Penske, Ganassi, Penske, Ganassi, Penske, Ganassi, or something. So expect a Penske win at Mid-Ohio. McLaughlin won there. Was it last year or 2 years? 2 years ago.
McLaughlin won there 2 years ago, courtesy of a being allowed to pit under a caution.
Did they?
That was. I'm pretty sure that was how he won there. So relevant topic of conversation.
Hello won last year by pretty much dominating. Well, Herter took pole, didn't he? But he had to be spending the pits or something, didn't he? I think Pelot did that thing which he seemed to do every race over last year, where he just overcut everyone by a country mile and somehow came out ahead. So I think that's probably predictions sorted for the rest of the year. So talking the rest of the year, we have got the hybrid installed from Mid-Ohio. Now, I'll be honest, I'm probably the least knowledgeable person on this in the entirety of IndyCar land because technical stuff just simply confuses me. But I know it's heavier, so we've got heavier engines and they have now like a boost they press, which is pretty cool. But
I know this is a topic that bores you slightly, Dan, and I won't bore people because I know getting into all the technical nitty gritty, which to be honest, I don't know perfectly anyway. And I don't think people particularly, maybe they do care about it, but I think the actual impact that we see on track is what people kind of care about most. So I'll just go through that. Look at the DIVEBOMB site if there's kind of anything technical you do want to know about it, because I've done quite a bit of kind of writing just on tests we've had and updates we've had, and in that I've got all of the kind of the details that you need to know, basically the essential stuff. But I think kind of just over a few details I've got down here. I think the sentiment from the drivers is that it's actually quite sad moving away from kind of not just an era of IndyCar, but an era of motorsport that they've kind of grown up loving. But at the same time, there is kind of a bit of excitement. I think there's a lot of questions to be answered as to kind of how the hybrid performs in race trim. I think that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch for. It's been tested pretty rigorously to a stage where the reliability now is really quite good. There's been testing on ovals of different lengths, multiple road courses, Sebring, which has acted as a street course because it is like bumpy as anything. Then I think the recent Milwaukee Open test that they had, there was one minor issue. That was for Alexander Rossi, and that was just for an attached part. That wasn't anything to do with the actual hybrid. So that's encouraging. I think one thing to keep an eye out for is the imbalance of testing that we've had. Penske, Ganassi, Arrow McLaren, Andretti did the vast bulk of the testing. So, I think those with less testing, it's not second nature to them yet. It will take more time to adapt. And I think, there's going to be a lot for drivers to get used to, because there's kind of differences between road and street courses, ovals, how they kind of regenerate the energy, which is kind of the purpose of it, or one purpose of it, is they're able to regenerate energy and essentially redeploy it, like for those F1 fans, like they do with ERS in the races, where, there's a limit per lap, but not a limit that they can deploy for an entire race. And they on road and street courses as well, they still have the time limited push to pass available. Yeah, I think some drivers have been a bit more skeptical about its impact than others. I think Pato O'Ward, after the recent Iowa test, said it was useless. After Iowa, and kind of reflecting on Milwaukee as well, that the power isn't massive yet. He didn't even use it in the Iowa test, I think he said. But I think this initial iteration, it will only develop and develop as time goes on. So we'll see more power as it gets kind of even more reliable over the years. To be honest, bar kind of drivers having to adapt and learn a bit more, I'm fairly confident there won't be too many issues, given just how much has been done testing-wise.
Really, I think it'll be pretty much identical. So we'll see what comes up. But anyway, talking of Iowa, I spoke a few weeks ago how they absolutely butchered it by repaving half a corner, which is a bit odd. IndyCar tested there, and my theory of them butchering it has been proved absolutely correct. It's a lot faster. It was something like 8 miles an hour faster, something absolutely ridiculous like that, over a short track. But the second lane also now doesn't work. I think Pato Ward again mentioned about needing a second lane. What's it called? Session where you just run the second lane. I did a Texas a few years ago, which worked absolute wonders. Which is a bit disappointing, because Iowa's always been quite reliable for good racing. So I mean, obviously we'll see what happens out of it, but they might have killed it.
Yeah. So this was a team test as opposed to an open test. Obviously, we spoke about Milwaukee the other week, so that was an open test. This was basically a kind of behind closed doors sort of thing. And there was some disparities in what drivers were saying. I think some were it was more to their liking, with the added speed, the added grip. I think Graham Rahal said that, it has kind of closed the gap a little bit. But the change, regardless, is apparently very, very stark. And, even if I think it's only the corners that have been repaved. I've not actually had a chance to look at the kind of highlights in the NASCAR race from last weekend. But, the consensus is it's faster, it's smoother, because there used to be quite a lot of bumps. It was reported by David Land that the lap averages were 189 miles per hour, which, as you said, Dan, 8 miles per hour quicker than last year's pole speed, which is quite something when you consider they were also using the heavier hybrid. So yeah, I think the high line practice could be could be something, because Ray Hall believed the second lane may open up, but it just wasn't there, basically. I think I take encouragement from the fact that NASCAR were, from the clips I've seen, running multiple lanes, but IndyCar's quite
easier
different.
to run. Because do you remember Texas, we had the PJ1, where it worked great for NASCAR. As soon as an IndyCar caught in it, no grip.
Yeah. So I think, kind of to conclude, it's kind of viewed as being better for driving experience, but maybe not for racing.
Because
I think
was bumpy.
Yeah.
And
One big thing was Pato O'Ward said that there's next to no tyre deg, which is kind of a disaster, because that's kind of a big part of Iowa and the spectacle that it is every year. And yeah, we've got this more robust compound with the hybrid, but I guess the smoother track surface is kind of playing into the fact there's less degradation. And O'Ward basically said that he now expects it to possibly be a fuel race rather than a tyre race. And Newgarden went as far as saying he essentially believes it's going to be a clean slate and nothing will translate, which, I mean, there's every chance Penske will still end up absolutely mastering it because they're just that good on ovals. But if we are to believe that nothing transfers from where they've been really dominant in recent years, then yeah, it could make it more competitive. But the way it seems at the moment is that overtaking opportunities will be limited if it remains at one lane with little tyre degradation. So yeah, there's a lot of questions going into Iowa. And that's only a fortnight away now, less than a fortnight as this will release. So yeah, will it still be Casa Newgarden at Iowa? Or
who's performing this year? Anyone remember?
It is Post Malone and Luke Combs. Luke Combs. I never know how to pronounce it. The Americans say Luke Combs.
Post Malone doing the green flag?
I don't know, actually. Yeah, Ed Sheeran did it last year, of course.
Ed Sheeran, the big IndyCar fan.
two big props for music, I must say. So yeah, midpoint of the IndyCar season. We're also midpoint of the Indy NXT season as well, just for those interested. And I think it's kind of worth us giving a mention as well for our countryman Louis Foster, who is, I don't think you could put it any other way than saying he's absolutely flying at the moment in Indy NXT. He's just put together a pretty awesome season. It started off slightly slowly. He didn't have an answer for Nolan Siegel, who is obviously now no longer there, or Jacob Abel in St. Pete, but kind of, the next two races, his issues there, or I wouldn't say issues were compounded there, because St. Pete finishing third still a good start to the season, but you got to Barber and he basically had an issue in every single session at Barber, stopped him from qualifying, but he still made his way through to fifth, which was quite an incredible drive. And then similarly in the first of the Indy road course races, I think he got front wing damage, had to pit, but still made it back to seventh in an even shorter period in that race. So that was the sort of drive that can win you championships, sort of racecraft that really catches IndyCar teams' eyes. But since then, he's just absolutely smashed it and has essentially been unstoppable. He won the second race on the Indy road course. He won from pole in Detroit. He finished second to Jamie Chadwick at Road America, but he had the edge of his rivals, who essentially now Jacob Abel, and possibly, as Dan kind of likes to push, that he believes Kyle Collette could become a championship factor. Possibly.
He laughed at me when I said that.
He may have laughed, but the young Brazilian came over from F3, was part of the Alpine Academy for a while. I think he spent 3 years in F3. But yeah, no, he's really caught the eye. Not as much as Louis though. Louis Foster then went and swept Laguna Seca, double pole, double win in their double header, led every lap. He was about half a minute clear of the field in both of the races, apart from Collette, who was kind of in slightly closer pursuit within 10 seconds. Despite any cautions whatsoever, still put about half a minute on the field. So yeah, he looks kind of in a fine position to take the championship with four out of the last 5 races won by him. And even with ovals coming, he had a background over here in Britain, but I think he won his oval debut in Indy Pro 2000, finished second at Gateway last year in Indy NXT. So yeah, just a word for our compatriot Louis Foster, who is doing an awesome job in Indy NXT at the moment.
Next week is race week, so it's the 5-stage Fast 6 predicted tournament time. I believe, I need to double check this, but you two were on 21 and I'm on 20. I need to double check that, but I believe those are the scores in the doors heading into the halfway. Mid-Ohio, yeah, mid sort of the halfway race, isn't it? So halfway through
Mid-Ohio
it gets a bit
halfway through the season.
It gets a bit complicated. Well, we've had thermal, so theoretically, What's interesting, we've had more race weekends this year. So we've had over half the race weekends, but not over half the races. So
yeah, but this definitely with the hybrid kind of feels like part 2 of the season. It's definitely clear 2 parts.
The Fast 6 predictor is going to be kind of ruined by all the ovals where the Fast 6 doesn't exist, but we'll come to that at the time. Anyway, we'll predict our top 6 and we'll get back to you in just a minute. Fast 6 predictor tournament. Who is going to go first this week?
I'm quite confident in my picks.
All right, let's see how confident you are then.
I've not gone for my triple Penske tactic this time because that backfired. So I've gone for Andretti duo trio. If you want to look at it that way, I've gone for Herta, Kirkwood, and Rosenqvist. I know they all made it in Laguna Seca, but I think they'll keep up that form. Then I went for Power Palou and O'Ward after his spin in qualifying at Mid-Ohio last year.
I'll go next. I went Herta, Dixon, Award, McLaughlin, Rosenqvist, yeah, and then Palou.
Archie, I've got one different to you. I've gone Herta, Palou, Newgarden, Dixon, Award, Kirkwood. Is my prediction for the Indy 200 at Mid-Ohio. Iowa haven't come out of banging race names this year.
Have we got the names through? Have we got the names through?
It's the same ones as last year, I think. Home step and
the one step,
one step and home front. Home front.
Yeah,
nothing more
front,
top.
250.
The Hy-Vee salute to the farmer 300 presented by Google. What a race that was. Atto's last on-track victory as well, so it's got an extra special place in my heart. So. What a race that was. So yeah, next week will be our Mid-Ohio review. I'm traveling next 3 weeks, so every single week is going to be a different location. So this is the podcast. You can guess where I'm going to be every single week for the next 3 episodes, I think. So
I mean, I'm going to have to try and watch everything over the Mid-Ohio weekend on the go as well, because I'm being a semi-traitor and being at Silverstone for the F1. So don't worry, I'm going to rep some IndyCar merchandise and try and do our bit. See what we can do.
Yeah, I'm going to have quite the adventure watching IndyCar in some random mountains and some country I won't reveal to not ruin the viewers' guesses. But who knows? I don't even know if the episodes will come out on time. We'll try our best, but I'm going to be in some pretty random places. So you'll see some interesting backgrounds in the next few weeks. So yeah, we'll try our best. It should be quite good fun. We've got, I think, 3 race weeks in a row to occupy us. So we've got 4 races in 3 weeks, so we'll have plenty to talk about. Loads of race reviews and race action, so should be, hopefully, quite good fun. So that's about all we've got time for this week. So thanks very much for watching, thanks very much for listening, and we will see you next time.